Hello and welcome to this review of the Virharmonic, Bohemian Violin and Bohemian Cello. It's been a long time since I did a review on this channel. I've been mostly posting music, so you haven't seen my face in a long while. And that's because I don't actually really like doing reviews, but I did feel that I had to do this review, and this is why I'm here today. For this reason, and also because I really hope that you'd see my face and that you'd be reminded that for me, it isn't over. Right, so I think the main issue here, as we all know, is that virtual solo string instruments are possibly the hardest ones to make, okay? It's all well and good to do a string ensemble or to do a piano, to do a guitar, but as you know, it's very difficult to make a convincing solo violin, solo cello, solo viola, and so on and so forth. And now, if you are one of those people who, like me, have been doing a lot of research, looking for basically the perfect cello or the perfect violin, perfect VST cello or violin, obviously, then this video is most definitely for you. So what we're going to do here is we're going to look at these instruments, we're going to play them, we're going to test them, and we're going to decide, we're going to see basically how close they get to that idea of the perfect, or almost perfect VST violin and VST cello. Are they going to get close at all? If so, by how much? Are they not? Are they worth, spending roughly €200 for each? Keep watching, and we'll try and find out together. Right, what we're going to do next is I'm going to give you an overview of these instruments, how they work and how they differ from other instruments. It's not going to be very technical, because if you want that, then you can go and watch the tutorials made by Virharmonic. They're going to be better because they made the instruments, so they know the instruments better than I do. Mine is going to be more of a customer's perspective, if you will, and hopefully they'll help you. Right, first of all, how do these instruments differ from other string instruments out there? The idea, when you look at VST string instruments like cellos, violins, violas, I think broadly nowadays the market is split into two main types of products. You've got the ones that take the programming approach entirely or mostly. That means that the instrument, if you try and play anything on your keyboard out of the box, it'll sound absolutely shit. And because that's really not how the instrument is meant to be used. You're meant to go into your DAW and draw the notes, and then within the DAW change the articulations, select the articulations that you need, and change the dynamics and change the vibrato and all of those things. And then you have another category, and these are, I think, in the minority still, and they are the people that are trying to make VST instruments that are playable out of the box. In fact, that they are meant to be played rather than programmed. And in this category, you would find, say, audio modeling, sample modeling, and Virharmonic. It's interesting that I've seen a trend of a lot of companies moving from the programming to the playing approach, because even companies that historically used to do a lot of instruments that really programmable, is that a word? They are now trying to they would always like include a patch. They would call it like a live patch or a whatever patch. You can see an example of that with the latest, with Native Instruments Cremona Quartet. They have that. They have a patch that is meant to be sort of flexible, and you can play and get fairly good results. But based on what I've seen and what I've heard, my understanding is that they are still very much instruments that must be programmed within your DAW in order to sound realistic. Now, here is how Virharmonic, the Bohemian Cello and Violin differ. They are meant to be played. That's why the Virharmonic call them performers. because basically they will make those choices on your behalf as to what articulation it should play, what dynamics it should use, what vibrato it should use. So all of that is happening under the hood so that you can just concentrate on playing, and the instrument will choose for you basically it'll make all of those decisions for you. And the way they've done it is by adding to the instrument what they call moods. And these moods basically, they are ways in which the instrument responds to your playing. So for example, if you want to play something that is very slow and emotive, there's the emotive mood. If you want to play something that is a bit more upbeat or faster, there's the charadash mood. And if you want something that is a bit sort of a jack of all trades, something that is flexible and it can handle most things, they've got an improv mood. There's other moods as well, but these are the main ones. And so basically, in theory, by just selecting the mood, you should just be able to get on with your playing without making any choices, without programming dynamics and vibrato and all those things. Now, let's step back a little and look at ideally what you need to control in order to have a realistic performance with a solo string, string instruments in general, but especially solo ones. Ideally, what you want to be able to have control over your vibrato. You want to be able to have control over your dynamics or expression. You want to be able, of course, to control the articulations. Is it going to be a legato? Is it going to be a staccato? Is it going to be spiccato? Is it going to be pizzicato? And so on and so forth. And you want to be able to control the bow change. Are you going to do an bow change? Are you going to do say a fingered legato? Are you going to do a portamento? Are you going to do a bow change? Basically, that's what you call it, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Those are the main things you want to control. Now, if you have the traditional sort of instrument, you would be able to control those things yourself using from within your DAW, using a CC channel or selecting a patch that does a specific articulation. Now, how do the Bohemian Cello and Violin go on about controlling these things? Number one, vibrato. The vibrato is baked in. That is to say, you have no control over your vibrato. The instrument chooses the vibrato for you that it believes is most suitable to the passage, to the note that you are playing. Dynamics. Can you control your dynamics? You can control your dynamics, and the main way to control the dynamics is through velocity. That is how hard you hit the key. Now, some instruments like the audio modeling and the sample modeling instruments, they take a different approach so that you have you've got velocity to control the attack of the note, but then you can still continue to control that dynamic curve after you've hit the note using a CC channel, for example, the modulation wheel. And a lot of string libraries, even like string ensembles, they will allow you to do that nowadays. I think most of them, I struggle to think of one that doesn't allow you to do that. That'd be pretty crap. So you play the notes, you move your modulation wheel, and you can have a crescendo or you can have a diminuendo and so on and so forth. Now, how do you do that with the Bohemian Violin and Cello? Basically, you have, once you've hit the note, you have, as far as I understand, you have no control over the dynamic curve. Unless you use specific keys, like if you want a diminuendo, if you want a note that basically goes from louder to less loud, you would have a key switch for diminuendo, and it will do precisely that. And the same goes for the type of the legato. Is it going to be a slurred legato? Is it going to be a fingered legato? Is it going to be a bow legato? The instrument chooses that for you based on how you play. Specifically, there's a couple of tutorials out there that were published by Virharmonic that will show you that you can actually have control over the kind of legato that you have based on how you play the notes and how close they are to how the notes are close, how close they are to each other, basically. So if you leave more of a gap, you would get I think it's a bow legato, and if the notes are closer, basically if you're playing faster, it'll do a fingered legato and so on and so forth. If you do a very slow transition from note to note, you would get a portamento. I'm going through these very quickly because this is not meant to be really a tutorial. I mean, there are tutorials out there. I'm just trying to give you an overview of how the approach that they take, and so that you can choose whether this is for you or not. Now, the question is, I mean, we all want, no, we don't all want that, but some of us do. Some of us want an instrument that makes those choices for us so that we don't have to be bogged down by all of that programming. We can just get on with our playing and feel inspired and compose something beautiful, hopefully. It might be shit, but hopefully it'll be beautiful. The question really is, I mean, Bohemian Cello and Bohemian Violin do that for you. The question is, how well do they do it, basically? My two concerns were these. Concern number one. With the dynamics being mostly controlled with velocity only, meaning with you not being able to control the dynamic curve once you've played the note, is the instrument going to be good enough at guessing what you want to play? You know, are you gonna feel frustrated because you can never get that note the way you want? So basically, it's dynamic. Does the instrument handle dynamics convincingly enough? And my second concern was, is the delay in the legato significant, and is it significant to the point that it makes the instrument useless? With a lot of string instruments, when you have a legato, real legato, what the instrument does, there's always a bit of a delay, a bit of a lag between you playing the notes and you hearing what you're playing, and they say that that is normal. A lot of instruments do that, and all of the companies that make instruments like that, they say that's normal. It's the legato working as it's intended to work, and that is so that you can have a realistic performance, because it takes a certain time basically for a violinist or a celloist to play those notes. The problem is that I've tried some instruments like that, and the delay was it was so much that it basically made playing impossible. If you're programming, it's not so much of a problem because you're drawing the notes in. Then if you have a delay, you shift everything a bit ahead, and you get to go. But if you're playing in real time and you have a considerable delay, it completely throws you off, because you're playing and the sound is reaching your ears way too late, and you're just incapable of playing anything, basically. So that was my main concern. Now I have, very strangely, I went into the Virharmonic website and I listened to the demos specifically for the cello, and some of those tracks, they really sort of ignited, if you will, this concern of mine, to the point that I decided I don't think I'm gonna get this, because it sounds like the delay is quite obvious. And so I delayed my, if you pardon the pun, I delayed my purchase because of the delay, or what I thought was a delay. Now, there's only so much you can discover by watching demos and reviews about the delay. You don't really know if you're able basically to get on board with that until you can play it yourself and you can feel under your fingers the way the instrument feels. My other concern was about the vibrato. If you cannot control the vibrato, if the vibrato is baked in with every note, is it a problem, basically? I personally find that the instrument is extremely good at choosing a vibrato. It always knows what I'm trying to play. It always picks a vibrato that is suitable for the kind of mood and for the note that I am playing. Having said that, this violin, there's a reason why these instruments are called Bohemian Violin, Bohemian Cello, because obviously it's a very particular, it's a sort of particular way of playing the violin and the cello that is, I suppose it tends more towards a sort of Roma music, gypsy music. So it's a very lyrical, and the people from Virharmonic, they say this themselves, that the violin is very lyrical. So if you want to use this violin specifically for classical music, you may find, hey, actually I don't like the vibrato. There's too much vibrato, and there are instances when I'm playing that indeed I feel that sort of a raw sound, a very passionate vibrato. Sometimes it's a bit too much for the phrase that I'm trying to play. But I tell you what I use, what I mostly use these instruments for, or what I intend to use them for, is Celtic music, with traditional Irish fiddle, that kind of thing. Folk, Roma music, so music from the Balkans, and klezmer music, so Jewish, Middle Eastern music. And for those things, they are absolutely, personally, I think they're absolutely perfect. They nail it. They absolutely nail it. Having said that, how do they handle more, less lyrical or less passionate, not passionate, less passionate, but less lyrical passages or songs? If you want to play something that is a bit more on the, not quite classical, but more chilled, you know, is it going to be a problem? Now, of course, me being an absolute bastard, I thought I would just push this instrument to its very limits. I thought, how fast can I go? How fast a passage will this legato, the instrument's legato, be able to handle? I've taken a little Irish tune, I think it's Irish at least, and I've recorded it previously. It's not quantized or anything, so if it sounds like it's a bit like a, you know, a drunk man playing it, it's not the instrument's fault, it's me not playing very accurately. We're gonna listen to it first, and then I am going to increase the tempo to as much as we can. And for this, I'm going to use the Concertino mood, which apparently is meant to be, I personally found it, I mean, the Concertino mood, if you actually look at the instrument, it says, Concertino brings about a very assertive violinist, playing using mostly fingered legato. Yes, so it's meant to be for faster passages, and I actually found that my experience confirmed that. I used the Concertino mood for this particular piece, and I was well chuffed with the results. Let's hear it. All right, now let's have a look at the cello, the violin's fat brother, and find out whether it gives us the same emotions, whether it's as good, or whether it leaves us feeling a bit shortchanged, like a frozen pizza from a supermarket. That is a powerful instrument. Yet again, that was out of the box without any articulation changes, without any key switches. Considering that, is it amazing? Yes, I think it is. Is it as good as the violin? No, I don't think it is. I personally feel when I play the cello compared to the violin, that the violin is a bit more nimble. One of the main issues I have with the cello right now, and I hope that it's something they will fix with the upcoming update, is that the bow change is not as good as it is with the as it is in the violin. That is in the improvisation mood. But basically, what I find with the improvisation mood is that the bow change in some notes, and that's the thing, it's not very consistent. In some notes, it lacks that sort of the attack is not as strong, which means that sometimes you can't actually perceive the bow change. When I say bow change, I do mean on the same note. So I'm talking about actually rebow. Sorry, I should specify that. The rebow is not as good as it is in the violin. I mean, it's very subtle, but for me, it's not quite there yet when you compare it with the violin. Now, I thought, for the sake of being fair, I thought, if I didn't have the violin, I would think that it might have to do with my own keyboard. As I said, it's not fully weighted, so I thought maybe the velocity is not very accurate. Maybe you need a harder velocity. That's how the instrument works. And I've tried, if you try and increase the sensitivity of my keyboard in order to have a higher velocity, with a higher velocity, the rebow is a lot more present. You can hear the attack. But the question is, what if you want a quiet rebow? I mean, if you're playing a very slow passage, a very quiet passage, you'll still hear the rebow. So for me, if I don't know if anyone out there has got a different take on this. If you do, please do let me know in the comments whether I'm getting something wrong here. But when you compare, basically, ceteris paribus, is that how you say it? Ceteris paribus, maybe. With all the variables being the same, with all the settings being the same between the cello and the violin, the rebow in the violin in the improvisation mood, in my opinion, is a lot better, is a lot more obvious. It's a lot more present. I am nitpicking here, really. It's nothing that I think you cannot fix in post-production when you edit the part with the cello. So is it a deal breaker? Absolutely not. But it's still a minor issue that I found. The other thing I found with the cello is it's a little bit more temperamental than the violin in terms of the velocity. I find sometimes that I play something, and unlike the violin, which you saw earlier, the notes are a bit too pronounced. But bear in mind, I'm using not a fully weighted keyboard, so this is an issue that you might not have at all if you're using a fully weighted keyboard. And B, is there a B? No, there's no B. Well, B is that you can always fix it in post-production, so it's not that much of a problem. Okay, that's me done talking. I've been talking for 315 hours. So thanks if you've been staying with me all this time. Kudos to you. I hope I haven't sent you to sleep. The last thing I'm going to do is I am going to play something live if I can. My hands are very cold and I've been holding this thing for like all night. So I'm going to play something live with a piano track in the background for you to see how the instrument, the violin, handles real-time playing along with the track. You know, the answer is yes, okay, the delay with the legato is not really detectable, you can't hear it, but what if you try and play along with another track? We'll do that. After that, you won't hear my voice anymore for a while, thank God, because I'll just play some passages that I recorded previously. Yet again, these have been recorded, but I haven't edited them, they're still out of the box. And you'll get to hear more of the violin and see what it sounds like in different styles, in different passages, with a piano, without a piano, and so on and so forth. So, catch you in a bit. Okay, we've made it to the end of this tutorial. It's been a long time since we started. It's taken me a long time to finish this. In the meantime, I've attained a degree in aeronautical engineering. I've moved to Papua New Guinea and I've had 3 children. So I think it's about time to tell you what I think exhaustively about these instruments. My question in the beginning is, are these the best VST solo violin and cello instruments out there after the research that I've done in my experience? The answer is, I think they are. I have not heard a solo violin or solo cello that sounded so convincing. Without that much work behind it, really, because you're not doing anything. You saw me playing those things out of the box. Having said that, there are a few things to say. As I said in the beginning, I'm going to repeat myself now a little bit, so I do apologise for that. I don't think the cello is quite on par with the violin yet. That is not to say that the cello is not really, really good. It's just the violin is so good that it sets the standard really high. And so in comparison with that, the cello is, I think, still wanting in certain aspects, specifically the aspects that I said earlier. There's the rebow that is not as convincing, it's not as quite there, and it's not as agile as the violin. If you heard those pieces in the end, you could see that the violin basically, no matter how you play it, even when you play it out of the box, it always sounds real. Sometimes it may sound, because of the nature of these instruments, because they're very lyrical, the vibrato is very intense, sometimes you may find, it's like a violinist who's playing a bit too aggressively, but it still sounds like a violinist. Whereas with the cello, in some passages, every now and then you do think, is this a VST cello? But with it, just what that means is that at this stage it just takes a little bit more work with the editing with the cello in order to get it to the level of the violin, but it doesn't mean that it cannot get there. It just means that out of the box, for me, it's still a little bit lagging behind. Now I'm hoping that with the updates, these issues will be solved, really. I mean, they're not really problems, but that they will be improved. So I'm looking forward to the introduction to the update of the cello. The other thing, as I've just said, is yes, these instruments are very lyrical. The vibrato is very strong, so sometimes you may find that style, that very raw style, does not suit every piece. You can, by working on the velocity, you can actually adjust it a little bit so that it's not always so aggressive. And you saw earlier, actually, without any editing, it was still quite good at playing more mellow passages. So I don't personally find that's an issue. I will still be using these instruments for virtually all my solo violin and cello projects, that is for sure. The other issue with the cello is that sometimes the legato is, especially I find in the mid-range, it doesn't sound as realistic as with the violin. And that's the thing I found ultimately with the cello. If I wanted a more realistic performance, I had to use the key switches more and force, especially the mid arcs. Whereas with the violin, I didn't have to do that. The other thing with the cello is it is a bit more temperamental in terms of the velocity. So basically, you will have noticed this because I didn't edit anything, especially in the end. You will have noticed that sometimes you play a note on the cello and it's really pronounced, it's really loud. And that's because it's more sensitive to velocity variations. Now, of course, there's the fact that, as I said in the beginning, I am using not a fully weighted keyboard. So you might not have these issues at all if you have a proper fully weighted keyboard, but it's still something that needs to be said. The other thing that I would like to see is precisely a mood, since the sprightly is just really a combination of shorts. I would like to see a mood that combines automatically, based on your playing style, legato and short. So legato and say staccato or spiccato. And I don't think it's very difficult to implement. I'm sure they could do it quite successfully. So for me, that would take these instruments from 95% of the way there to 100% there. In the beginning, I sort of left it up to you to make up your own mind about the concerns that I had, such as the legato delay. Is there any legato delay? How do they handle dynamics? Because for me, from watching those, listening to those pieces, it's sort of self-evident. It really speaks for itself. I think that the dynamics are handled superbly, really, 80% of the time to 85% of the time, and then the remaining times, depending on how fussy I am, I may go there and tweak things to make it 100% the way I want it to sound. And as for the legato delay, as you can see, it's there, but it's very, 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 very. It's a very slight delay. It's almost imperceptible, to the point that you saw me playing that piece live with the piano track along the piano track, and it was absolutely fine. That goes both the violin and the cello. I also played the cello very fast, and you saw that the runs, everything, they are handled very, very well. The only thing I think that out of the box the cello doesn't handle very well, as I said, is the rebow in certain moods like the improv mood. So my final take on these instruments is that I was extremely, extremely impressed with them. I wish I got them earlier. I wish I hadn't waited this long. I've waited 2 years. And to be frank, now that I got them, I think they are worth every penny, every fraction of a penny. The sheer level of realism is just, when I first played the violin, I was like, oh my God, this is it. And I'm looking forward to what the company's gonna come up with next. I mean, I do know that they are working on a viola, and possibly the whole string quartet, maybe, or well, double bass. But I would love to see, as a huge fan of klezmer music, I think they could really pull off an amazing klezmer clarinet. That is my own personal wish, of course. So that's it. I hope that was helpful. If it was helpful to you, go have a cookie. You don't subscribe if you're after reviews, because on this channel I don't do an awful lot of reviews, so that's fine. Okay, I'll see you later. Cheerio.